of male role models, solid, positive role models for young men in the Tobago space. There seems to be a serious challenge there. He spoke about children emulating what they see, all right? So they're basically repeating patterns. Their behavior is almost a direct replica of what the adults around them are doing, right? And we also talked about the issue of crime in the mind, the power of the mind, and perhaps wanting to live a life well beyond your means, well beyond our means, wanting riches, our idea of riches. ACP spoke about when a young man gets some money, a decent amount of money, what's the first thing that many of them will buy? A car. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about during the break is that it's so unfortunate because even in terms of the value of money, right? And this came out in some political discussion recently when people were talking about the value of $1 million, 1.6, that kind of thing. Now, I won't go into that, but it's relevant to what we're talking about here because if you have $100,000 and a roll-on, roll-off is perhaps one of the cheaper ones, are perhaps around $90,000 or so. The lower-end showroom vehicles may be about 132, 135, 140, right? In the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money. But if you're young and you get that amount of money, you purchase one of those vehicles and you think you're rich. But the people who purchase the showroom vehicles are not necessarily the ones passing through the criminal justice system.
No.
It may be the ones who are purchasing the roll-on, roll-off and the second-hand vehicles. So again, we have some issue with respect to the mind. Now, what I want to ask you from all of your years in crime fighting, and you have handled some of the toughest areas in Trinidad and Tobago, being stationed in Trinidad for quite a long time. When you look at the Tobago situation, just not necessarily as a police officer now, just as a man and a father, is there anything that the men who are listening to you right now can realistically get up in the morning and say, well, okay, let's do this. Let's perhaps have this conversation. You're not talking about asking people to become, overnight saints or anything like that. Even the people who have lived a life of crime, perhaps still in it or perhaps trying to make their way out or they're out of it. Is there anything that some of these men can do so that we don't have another young Tobagonian boy dead, murdered, and we see in the footage?
It's never too late to be who you want to be. And the time is always right to do what is right. I'll say that, I'll expand on that. Now, I remember in 1994, I was going to an advanced economics class in Signal Hill. And a colleague of mine from Belgarden sat on the side of Carrington Street close to the port. And he said to me, a big old man like you, I thought about you, I go to class. Stop wasting your time. So I went to my classes. I did what I had to do. Then I went on to law school in England, and I came back. I'm not saying this as a boast. I'm just saying this as an example. The sad story is that while I still pass on Carrington Street, I no longer walk with a bag over my shoulder. But my partner's still there, in the same place, talking the same thing.
Right.
I said that to say we are all about the same age. I passed my first GCU level when I was 30 years old, I passed it when I was 30. Everybody would have given up and say, well, no waste time, man. But after I passed that was mathematics.
Right.
So I said, if I can pass mathematics, I can pass almost any subject. And so I was like a man possessed. And I'm sharing my experience because I think sharing your experience with people is, in my opinion, the better thing to do than to give you a whole set of rules by which you must think. And I applied, and I say, if I can do it, you can too. And if you're going to say bad things about me, say, if William Nurse did it, I can do it too. Because nothing is beyond you if you if your mind is made up. My mother used to say, a mind made up is half the task. So I say to you, it's never too late to be who you want to be, and it's never too late to do what is right. And a mind made up is half the task.
Now, you talk about the detractor. That's my term. We are, all of us, we have a lot of detractors in this space. It almost seems second nature in Tobago that whenever you try to do something, particularly for young people, there's somebody to tell you, why you play? What are you going to do that for? That making any sense? You can make any money from that? People living now. And I wonder about that, and again, the link to crime. I know although I didn't specifically talk about poverty, but you mentioned the issue, the studies about poverty not being linked to crime.
Nice.
But if you have to wake up today and you need milk, you need bread, you need food, worse yet if you are children. A lot of our young men are fathers. And you have nothing in your house to eat. Where are you getting it from? How are you going to get it? Because the unfortunate thing is that so many people are there crying you down, you know, and they have something to say, but not many people are actually helping. I know in the past we used to talk about people used to, you know, lend you a hand, give you some food, you could ask a flower and that kind of thing. But the nature of the environment has changed, ACP. And sometimes when I look at the boys, I'm sure you could see it. You know, when you look at some of them fellas, their eyes tell you that they no longer care. They're no longer interested. That's a sad, sad, sad thing to see. How do you reach those guys, especially if they have people that they need to feed, or some mother home believing that they should take up the role of a father that's not there?
All right, let me say this. It depends on what you want to eat. When you say you have nothing to eat, it depends on what you want to eat.
Right.
So you may want to eat fried chicken. You may want to eat baked chicken. You may want to eat a nice ham leg and so on. But you know something? I cannot help but look back at my own experience as a child growing up. And people do not hesitate to remind me of what they thought my life was. So they say, well, if you get 2 cassava and you grate that cassava and make a nice cassava bread, and you get some bajibus and steam it down with a little piece of saltfish with some coconut milk, you get food. And people may think, well, me or what kind of food. Our young people do not eat our indigenous food, but the money, no. The Prime Minister normally will say, you can't have more money and drink champagne. So I was cognizant of that as a child growing up. My parents had Morby money, so William Nurse drink Morby. And I am better off for it today. Health-wise, I'm better off. I mean, I have sacrificed. Delayed gratification is another thing we have to teach our children. The opportunity costs in relation to a particular thing that you might want. When I wanted my first Converse, I went and get copra. You know where's copra?
No.
You get the dried coconut, you cut it, you dig it out, and you put it on a galvanized to dry, and then you send it down to town, somebody will buy it to make coconut oil. Things are not harder today than they were in 1976 when I was a 13-year-old.
But you have parents, ACP, that either facilitated or taught you those skills. That's not the same right now. How many young people, unfortunately right now, can't cook? When we were coming up, when you were growing up, I know in my time, almost everybody in the house could cook. Now, you don't have to be able to cook for everybody, but people could cook.
Stick up in.
Now you have people that can't cook anything.
How you used to cook? Where you used to cook on?
Well, in my time, I had a stove.
Right.
we used to go outside sometimes with the tree stone.
Well, this is the point. My mother had a little kitchen, a concrete kitchen, and there was a window to the concrete kitchen. And outside there was a fireside. I used to have to get my mother's bamboo to put in the oven on a Friday so she can bake. we just don't give children anything to do. We give children a false sense of living. That everything you just have to ask and you'll get it. I used to have to get up, even if when I was in common entrance class, leave Richmond Point, go way up to Glamorgan to look after the sheep, and I better come back in time because Lytton Stewart is the principal of Belgarden Anglican Primary School. So I better get there on time. And I had to get there on time.
You know, ACP, you song like the aunt that I grew up with and like my mother and them. As a teenager, they say, okay, all you're lazy, and they start to talk about they used to go down Bottom River and tote a bucket of water to come up. When I was a teenager, it had a standpipe. So I had to go all the way down there, and then it had a pipe in the yard. So I going back again to, there are young people who will not necessarily be able to relate to the importance of those things. And as you rightfully said, there may be some issues with our parenting. Now, I don't believe in having a police state, but the presence of the police is important at a time like this, because we do need to be able to curb crime and that kind of thing. Is it that perhaps police should start locking up parents?
Well, the thing is, the police is a creature of statute, and they have to do what the law says. If the law doesn't give them the right to lock up parents, then they can't lock up parents, because parents, unless they create an offense of bad parenting.
But we have neglect.
Well,
we
yes,
have a lot of neglect happening in Tobago in a bicycle here.
But
so we don't go there.
There is something which must attend the neglect. You know, if you neglect your child, if you abandon your child, those are, you know, things. But in the real sense, that neglect must pan out in something else. You understand? But it is not necessarily all bad. Let me say that. It is not all bad. I am certain we can reach some of those young men and women who need help. Right? It's not all lost. I am an eternal optimist. I believe that truth crushed the earth shall rise again. And but it's not going to be a quick fix.
Okay, so let me ask you a little bit about the technical side. And I know that unfortunately for us in Tobago, you are returning to Trinidad in 2 days' time to take up duties there. And we'll have another person here in Tobago. But recently, I saw that the Chief Secretary said there was a meeting with yourself in terms of the TTPS and other people from national security. Now, that was an interesting announcement because we all know about the THA and the lack of teeth in Tobago. But nonetheless, it was good because one, you see the Chief Secretary actively thinking about what's happening, or at least persuaded to think about that. What can we realistically see happening as it relates to national security in Tobago? And this is from your technical expertise with respect to crime fighting on the island and saving some of those people, the young men especially that you talk about there. Is something like that comfort patrol that existed before, is that in your mind a good idea for Tobago? Because that becomes a THA kind of baby that will perhaps work in partnership with the Tobago division of the TTPS. How do you see these things?
Well, the comfort patrol can both be reactive and proactive. You know, it goes about and it checks neighborhood and so on, and may act as a deterrent. But we need more than that. We need more than that. We need more than the police arresting people. Because police efficiency is not judged by the number of crimes reported and solved and the number of persons arrested and so on. But when there's a genuine reduction in criminal activities in a society, we say that we have a safe place. Now, my thinking is, just before the announcement came that I was leaving, I had a conversation with the principal of a particular school. And I asked her to join whatever program she has in an attempt to reach our boys. And there's where we have to go. We have to go into the schools. We have to go into the clubs, the youth group. And police officers have to now begin to reinfuse, if there's any such word, themselves in the society, go into the society. The limers, go in the bar, talk to the people. Right? That is the hallmark of a detective. You know. He knew everything that happened because people kept him informed. Now, we have lost respect. Generally, the police have lost respect for members of the public. Members of the public have lost respect for the police. How are we going to get around that? It's a slow, hard climb. We have to teach our children respect from home. Get your children up early in the morning. Read the Bible with them. Some children have never gone back to church since the day they were christened. Parents have no time because parents are on the run. But these are the little things. Make time to worship with your children. Just today I was saying, our education in this country is built on religion. So there is not a single government primary school in Tobago East. From Charlottesville right down, all are religious schools.
What if you're somebody like me, who is not religious at all, and I don't subscribe to that thinking? I respect people and their choices. But for me, you don't get to tell me, worship, read the Bible with the child, because that's not what I believe. I don't disrespect people who believe it. I don't tell them, don't do what you're not doing. But if you are trying to reach somebody like me in terms of crime prevention, what do you say to those parents?
I don't have to reach you.
But there may be other parents who feel like me. What do you say to parents who are not religious and so inclined?
So that drives me to become a little philosophical. We are neither angels nor gods. We are human beings, and we were born and created with the ability to reason. I think that might be John Locke. So we have the ability to reason, and we must explore that. We must explore it, develop it, harness it. Right? The little thing. Now, England is not a place you can go on the corner of the streets and talk God, you know.
Sure.
But England, over centuries, have taught its citizens, you must not thief. You understand what I'm saying? And so, I'll give you an example. While I was at law school there, some things fell out from my pocket. Oh, William, you're throwing away your things. That's the thou shalt not steal coming out of it. So they live it. Right. Trinidad and Tobago must begin to teach its citizens to live. We must begin to live. Okay, you're not religious. What about the Independence Pledge? Do you know it? Do we teach our children it?
I wouldn't even go into a discussion on that with ACP. We will go in a different direction.
You understand what I'm saying?
But I do understand.
So these little things is the little. Listen, reading and learning does to the mind what exercise does to the body.
Right. But we have a society who, unfortunately, cannot read well. And when there are attempts, genuine attempts, to say, let's fix this, people take offense first. You go in the most polite ways and say, okay, let's fix this. You will say, we don't necessarily need adults in a big class with 10 people so everybody know all 10 all can read. You don't necessarily need a parent to announce to the school that my child may have dyslexia or some sort of learning disability that causes them to learn differently. But from the time you say, let's try to, one, recognize the issue. Because the literacy is a plague. Illiteracy is a plague on this island. Right? It's ACP, it is a problem.
But hear this, right?
How do you get people to admit it so that we could fix the reading?
You think that's a very serious statement you've made. And you know when people come up for jury service.
Stand up in a bank line any day.
Men would run away. But you know, reading is really a habit which builds confidence, not just calling words. A lot of people can read and they can call words very quickly and so on.
Correct.
But reading, ask them to close the book. Tell me what you've just read. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when we were small, we had to read, we had to prepare for our Sabbath school lesson. And I'm not, hope I'm not offending you because...
No, you're not offending me at all.
Right, so we
Carry
had
on.
to prepare for our Sabbath school lesson. And we had a Sabbath school quarterly that had a daily lesson plan. So reading was important. You had to read, right? And the more you read is the more you want to read. Right? I always tell my police officers, I had some sessions with sergeants and inspectors, the police officer who reads distinguishes himself from his peers. I say the same thing. The little boy on the street corner, even though you're reading the newspaper, read it.
Now, I want to just swing back and be a little bit controversial there.
Let's go.
Police officers and even the issue of literacy there, the ability to reason, and how some of the officers communicate with members of the public. Now, you know, in Tobago, first off, disclaimer, plenty of we don't talk to we a certain way, because that does upset almost everybody. You know,
Yes,
we think
yes.
you're talking to. I may be wrong, you are quite a learned man. Ignorance often manifests itself in arrogance. And sometimes the arrogance coming through from some of the officers then fuels additional arrogance. You have people talking about delinquent officers, people talking about officers who themselves seem to be illiterate based on how they write up the tickets and that kind of thing. Is there something that can be done, or are you guys working on something there? Especially in a Tobago space, we're talking Tobago still. You understand, where everybody is almost family. To be able to help to address that. Because perhaps in other spaces in TNT, it might not necessarily play out the same way. But in Tobago, because of the closeness and the familiarity,
Let me tell you something.
there's a crazy kind of thing going on.
He who never made a mistake is he who never tried. To this day, I hate to write tickets. I'll be honest with you. Traffic laws were considered to be simple, but I never liked traffic laws. Even in my legal studies, I never liked traffic. You know, I don't know why, but I never liked it. And I have never been afraid to make, don't think that I haven't made mistakes, and I've made mistakes.
Well, you certainly wouldn't be where you are today.
Precisely. So, I mean, you have amendments, you can use that. But let us deal with the police and the public. How do they approach the public, and what is the public's response? I have led several major searches in Trinidad, in major cases. I wouldn't call the names. I think one is completed, and that was the AV oil.
Right.
I led the search in that. And I met a very arrogant man at one of the locations. A very arrogant young man. I later learned he belonged to a certain organization. I wouldn't call the name. But the point is, what is your focus? What did you go there for? I go there to search. And search I must. You understand? I have always addressed citizens, sir, madam. So I never had a problem with respect. Good day, sir. How are you? Your tire, your left rear tire is cutting very badly, so the canvas is showing. Are you aware of that? And he might tell you, but yes, I'm going to change it. Therein lies your evidence. So kind words turn it away wrath. That's what the Bible says. Police officers need to exercise wisdom in treating with public. They need to evince that which they have been taught to be polite. Police officers are generally taught to be polite.
Really?
Yes, they are. But they're a product of the society. Right? But
A product of American TV.
Well, I don't know.
But
you know,
it seems like we're following American culture.
Yeah, the police service is not a perfect organization. I wish I would see it grow towards that. But let us look at the let us look at the on the other hand. So if you show disrespect to people, they show disrespect to you. I have met people who I was polite to, and surprisingly I got good response. Even sometimes drivers do a lot of nonsense in Scarborough. They park up in the taxi stand, the private cars, and so on.
Right.
And sometimes I'm not always very nice. You know, I'm human. But generally, police and public need to work together.
Okay.
Showing respect. Let respect be that common thread that runs through that relationship between you and the public.
ACP, that's another long discussion. We just have about 5 minutes before we wrap. And so I want to take you back a little to your work, although I know that you'll be heading off into the life of bliss soon, hopefully. As you go on with this crime fighting initiative, can we in Tobago realistically see some sort of protectionism that isolates us? And when I say isolates us, the guns that have to pass through Trinidad, do they really have to come to Tobago? The drugs that pass in through Trinidad, must that really come to Tobago? Is it too much to ask that we in Tobago not have the amount of drugs passing here? Or if it has to pass here because of whatever is happening, can it stay on the sea, in the air, so that our young men do not end up murdered because of things like that? Can we get the high-powered rifles and all of the other guns and the ammunition? Can we get the majority of that off the island, or leaving it in the hands of the police and the other people from national security? Is that a dream? Can we turn back what has already been spiraling out of control in Tobago?
Well, let me tell you, say thank God. There is some crime in Tobago, but it's not spiraling out of control.
Okay.
Now, take comfort in that.
You've seen a lot of crime.
Yeah, take comfort in that. If we would all wish that the guns don't come here, but if they didn't come directly, others go to bring it. Right? My intel tells me that there's a thriving trade between Tobago and areas like islands like Grenada, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and so on. And if you think I'm lying, then examine the gentlemen who were arrested and charged and are before the court in Grenada for robbery.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Yes, yes.
So we have exported robberies. We are exporting robbers to other Caribbean islands. And that might very well be because crime is like water in a balloon. If you squeeze it here, it displaces it somewhere else. And maybe your police have been doing some good work. And so it was dried up. And so they look for new market. But let us assume that some of those ships were coming directly to Tobago. How the guns get in? Where did they come from? The commissioner said they came from North America. The manufacturer will the serial numbers will tell us and all these kinds of things. But our men are fascinated by guns.
ACP, I wish I had you for another hour, but I only have you for the hour, and the hour is up. I really want to thank you for taking your time to come and chat with us tonight at Tobago Updates. Unfortunately, one young man losing his life, being murdered, is too much. I know from where you sit, you may be in a position to say, let's be thankful that it's just one. the issues in Tobago with respect to the guns and the drugs and all of that. People, all they had to live, all they had to do, all they had to do, but we don't need to kill each other, right? I don't know how that's going to be sorted. I suppose I'm perhaps in a pipe dream tonight. We've been talking about crime and our young men in Tobago, and what are some of the things that we can do to make this place better? ACP Nurse, again, I just want to repeat some of the things that he said. He spoke about education, skills training, literacy, understanding, the need for strong, positive male role models in Tobago, the need to live within your means until you can legally afford, you know, more. Maybe we could just try for that. We can try for that. We can try for that and see how it goes. That's where I want to leave it tonight. All right, thank you for viewing For the Hour. Thank you to ACP William Nurse for joining me, and we wish you all the best as you return to Trinidad in 2 days' time. Stay updated by making sure you tune into Tobago Updates. Of course, there's the morning program, the morning show every morning, so make sure and check that out at 7 a.m. Thank you and good night. I am Glendora Lashley.